girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Louder Than Life, September 21st through the 24th in Louisville with Foo Fighters, Green Day, Tool, Avenged Sevenfold, Godsmack, Limp Bizkit, Pantera, Queens of the Stone Age, Weezer, Megadeth, Turnstile, and many more. Get your passes on sale now at louderthanlifefestival.com.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And real quick housekeeping note, you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey. Please hit that follow and subscribe button. Listening to us on Spotify or Apple, Google, any of those podcast platforms, please hit that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm about to bring you today. I'm catching up with an old friend. We're going to go down quite a few rabbit holes, talking with my old friend, Jon Reigle. What's going on, John?
Not a whole lot, man.
So, well, I mean, you say not a whole lot, but
yeah.
There seems to be quite a bit.
Yeah, there's quite a complex maze.
Yeah, quite a bit going on. And reason why, I wanted to get you on to share a little bit. But usually before we get into that, when I have somebody on for the first time, I like to get a background. So do you remember originally as a kid what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Originally, I think I honestly wanted to be a cop.
Yeah.
Because it was, after my father, was a cop for 20 plus years. And then it kind of got a little off track after that.
Yeah, it went a couple different directions then.
Yeah.
And then you've always been, into kind of like art, so to speak, music. Let's talk about some of your early musical influences.
Man, my first, I've always been a big fan of 80s metal. And from there, just, I was always into like art, which went into body mods. Then it went into sideshow. And then sideshow, as much fun as it was and chaotic, it just really spun me out of control. So I had to get out of that one.
Yeah. And I definitely wanted to touch on that because, what do you feel led you to getting it originally? Like you said, you're into art, and then tattoo, body art. But the body modification part of it, what kind of called you to that, do you feel?
I think I was trying to explore a deeper spirituality side to life.
Even before you knew you were doing that?
Yeah. It's, like the suspension, the tattoos, I was trying to do like a modern primitive thing that I didn't really understand what it meant at the time. I was just trying to get a deeper understanding of myself through, the body mods.
Because I've heard that too, when you mentioned the suspension, how that's actually kind of a spiritual thing like that. What the Native Americans used to do something similar, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The Sundance ritual.
Do you want to explain a little bit about that for the audience?
Well, it's just, it didn't start to really to what it is now until about maybe 20 years ago. It's just essentially taking hooks, placing them on various parts of the body for different positions and hanging. And it's very odd, like when to start off like a suicide through 2 or 4 in the back, the shoulder blade area. It's the putting all that weight on, and when your toes are at like just on the ground about to lift off, it's very overwhelming and frightening because you're so used to being attached to the ground that, being hung like that is such a bizarre and spiritual feeling. That's pretty much what started it. I mean, it's unbelievable the first time what it feels like.
Yeah. And I mean, I would think too, like, just like, exploring that pain threshold.
Yeah, that's something as well. I mean, does
that kind of help with the mind over like the mind over matter, the strength of the mind?
Definitely, yeah, because you're in such fear that you can't do it until it's like, just jump right into it. Don't go in there with I can't. Push your limits. And that's what's holding you back, is stopping to these fears of what you can't do instead of focusing on what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I've watched some of those videos and stuff, and it's just like I freak myself out because, of course, being a horror movie fan too, I've seen like Hellraiser and all that, and I just see people getting ripped apart by.
I've seen some things go wrong like that, but usually it's not. We're not trying to do that.
But would you say when you started getting into that, did you feel like having like one of your first like spiritual like awakenings or experience through that process?
Yeah, because like before that I felt lost. Like growing up when I was real young, I remember going to church a lot. And then one thing led to another, and we stopped going as families. Then families split, and then I kind of got this I don't know what to call it, like the whole separation and trauma from that. And I wanted to get it back as time went on because I always felt like I was missing something greater than how I was living life at the time. So I got into that in hopes that that was going to fill the void. But it turns out it was just the first step into something way deeper.
Yeah. And like, so around like the time frame, I think when we met, like the old No Excuses days in North Olmsted, this was before I think you had left for Sideshow.
Yeah.
So you were still kind of like, fresh in the body mod, tattoo stuff. But like, I don't know, when did it, like from that time frame when we met, and would hang out and talk to each other there, like, how did the Sideshow thing kind of come calling to you, other than you already had the looks for it?
Well, the time you met in those years was at the peak of my addiction to pretty much everything. I was a complete drunk, psycho, just overall bad guy that didn't really care about anything at the time. I was so lost.
Yeah, I think that's why we connected, like kindred spirits at that time, even though I didn't, go with I was that drunken, addict running around back then too, I mean, hanging with Dave Adams, remember him and all that, and just kind of searching, feeling like a lost soul myself. But I think that's what kind of bonded us.
Yeah, and then it got, as the years went on in that frame of mind, it, got into heroin. So everybody around me started dropping dead. And one day I was like, I got to get out of here. It's because I'm so used to everything. There's so much access to everything. I wanted a clean start. And I moved cross country to Albuquerque. And that's when I got deeper into suspension and doing shows. And then I saw an ad in the paper, and that was like 2006 for a traveling sideshow. So that's when I went on with Ozzfest. And really got into Sideshow for like the next 5 years.
Let's talk about, your journey into Sideshow, but also like, you mentioned Ozzfest, like what kind of like relationships and networking did that bring in your life?
It was interesting. that's when I got exposed to pretty much any known name in modern day sideshow. Lot of good people. Certain bands, stuff like that, you know, got connections with, became really good friends with. And we did Ozzfest for, I think, like 2 years in a row, and one of Warped Tour, but that didn't work out. And through those connections, I ended up moving to Vegas and got a show at Circus with other performers. I did that for, I think, like 3 years. But at that point, I was still struggling with alcoholism. And then again, you know, Ohio dragged me back because my best friend had overdosed. And that was when I said, that's it. I'm giving up everything in my life, doing sobriety. I'm doing the family thing, and I'm going to really dig into what I feel I've been missing off and on, you know, throughout my whole life. And that was the turning point, you know, when I wanted answers.
Gotcha. And then real quick before we, you know, cross into that, I mean, you at one point, you know, I mean, one of the famous sideshow people, Jim Rose, you worked with him as well.
Many of the people from there, I had only crossed paths with Jim a handful of times. The crew I was working with no longer really exists. They went on and turned into something else. But yeah, like Lizard was the main one. Me and him have been friends for, you know, 15, 20 years now because of that.
He was on X-Files and stuff too.
Oh, that was Enigma.
Oh, Enigma.
Yeah.
Enigma. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people got him confused.
Okay, yeah.
Hell, they got me confused with them at times.
But did you ever have a relationship with Enigma at all?
That's a story. I don't like talking negative about people, so
all right.
I'll pass on that one.
Well, it's kind of funny because, you know, I mean, like what we're going to end up getting into, you know, in the X-Files crossover, kind of, you know, that light bulb just went off in my head. But so, and then at one point, I mean, didn't you get married when you were out in Vegas too, or?
I got married when I came back after my buddy's death, and I, at the funeral, hooked up with some girl I'd known for quite a while. And while we were at a Superman convention in Metropolis in Illinois,
nice.
We got married.
Nice.
Jerry the King Lawler handed her away. I mean, it was surreal.
Dude, that is pretty amazing.
Walking down the aisle to the Flash Gordon theme.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know all that part of it, but I'm glad I asked that question so we could share that. And then you know, so that was already when you came back to Ohio. I thought this was maybe when you were in Vegas or something.
No, that was
because I know we were like kind of keeping in touch via social media off and on.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I didn't live in Vegas long. Maybe 3 years, I think, before I just gave up everything and was like, I gotta get out of there.
Yeah, because it's almost like you know, especially. I mean, what is it that Nick Cage movie, Leaving Las Vegas or whatever? If you're an alcoholic, it's probably not really.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I lived a block away from the Strip.
Yeah.
So anybody I came to visit, it's like, hey, let's hit the Strip. Oh man, all right.
Yeah, yeah. And then so your friend overdoses. You come home for the funeral, and that's but that wasn't the immediate point where you got, you know, you had the whole. I mean, it was the beginning. The seeds were planted for you to start like seeking recovery and seeking.
Yeah. I mean, that's when it really started to, you know, I hit the point, but I knew, I mean, it's not, as anybody can tell you, it's not just as simple as, okay, that's it. I'm done, you know, because I don't want to keep falling back into it, like trying to kid myself.
Yeah.
So I slowly weaned myself off alcohol and started understanding why I was using so much to begin, you know, and thought the whole marriage family thing was going to be the thing that I was lacking and, you know, suffering from, that I was filling it with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they say to, you know, a lot of us in recovery. It's like, you know, you're trying to fill a hole, you know, inside, and it's either, you know, you numb out with the alcohol and drugs instead of like, you know, it's fine. It's fine. Like when we get that spiritual connection where, you know, but yeah, and then relationships, we're addicts, so we'll just jump into whatever.
Yeah. Become addicted to that,
Yeah, yeah. But and let's continue talking a little bit about how that went around, and then then we'll bring it up to, why the main thing we wanted to start getting into.
All right. Well, let's see. Eventually into that relationship shortly after marriage, I slowed way down on drinking, started, slowly getting a grip on anger and stuff like that, and found out that the wife was pregnant. So the day he was born is the day I gave up smoking and haven't gone back. And that was right around the time that I stopped drinking completely.
Okay.
So I used that was the turning point of, that was when I realized I cared more about somebody else than myself. And after losing everybody close to me my whole life, I didn't want him to be like that. So I gave up all my bad habits over another's life, because I wanted him to not suffer.
And that's, that's another thing that we have in common. Cause it's like, I'm a father too. And like my girls were a huge proponent of why I wanted to change. Unfortunately for me, it didn't happen right away.
Yeah.
I was slipping back in and out of the bad habits when they were little and stuff. You hold your first child, man. And if you're not a cold-blooded friggin', narcissist, man, it does something to you. It's like the Grinch, when the heart grows, man.
I had always been told I was a narcissist or a sociopath, and then and here I am, this crazy dude that didn't fear anything, the wild man, and I'm holding my son for the first time, and I'm asking a doctor if I'm gonna hurt him holding him like this.
I was like sobbing, dude. I was just like, wow, man, it's like I can't believe this. When I held my daughter for the first time, it was just like I knew, because I was already very selfish and self-centered. I didn't think and then women, I would just, objectify and use for my own personal gain. And then it's like, then it's like, and it's still, like it could be a struggle, but then God's just like, all right, I'm going to send you another daughter then, since I didn't, that first 2x4 across the head didn't seem to really wake you up.
Yeah. When my second was born, my daughter, that was a pivotal point as well.
Yeah. So, so similar, like with me, then, these awesome, amazing events happen in your life. You start realizing it's not just about you. It's not just the John show anymore, but and I'll let you tell your story. I don't know, but like I said, with me, I didn't get sober right away. I still went back out and messed stuff up. I don't know how your story goes as the kids come along.
Yeah, mine kind of bounces around. Like, I wanted to be the educator, their teacher, the one to save them from all my mishaps. So I started researching into different areas that I really didn't have much knowledge on, that I had hoped would be, I started studying different religions, secret societies, lost information, prophecies, stuff like that, in hopes that I can figure, some epic thing to leave them with, because, I never really saw me as leaving them like millions of dollars. I wanted to leave them with some superior knowledge of something.
Yeah. My dad would always tell me knowledge is power, and that, but of course when I was coming home with F's and I was just a class clown, he was trying to instill like, hey, learn, man, and I think I've kind of like similar path like you, gone for the wisdom and knowledge, because it's not the true wisdom and knowledge really isn't taught by our teachers. That's probably why I didn't,
Yeah, it's not really taught too many valuable things in the education system anymore. Just enough to get you to skate by, pretty much.
Yeah. And then, so, how are your kids today? Like, what's,
yeah, that's where it kind of spirals from there.
All right. Yeah.
That was that was a real that's an emotional turning point. That's where the crazy story begins. I had to walk away from my life of happiness because of a choice I didn't want to make. Because that's when I had got deep into secret society, which there's no point in even naming, but got very high up in the ranks. And to get into the next rank, I had never thought that something that was supposed to be so spiritual and enlightening was going to give me such a dark decision. And it was more like they wanted me to feed my greed by a sacrifice. And I knew if I walked away, I didn't know what the outcome would be. Like they might, go after the thing they were asking me to choose. So I pushed the wife away and the kids. And because of that, I decided I was going to get to the deepest part of why something like that would even exist, how it came to be. Why would they make me make such a choice?
So I know, that's pretty deep. I didn't know any of that stuff.
I've never, that's why I put off the show for a while. Because a lot of these things you'll hear from other people.
Yeah. And
you'll think, oh, that can't be real. But make no mistake about it, it is.
Now, I know, from ancient books that I try and be familiar with, because I still have maintained, my connection to, my Christian faith and stuff. But even in the Bible, it was like, there was a point where God was asking, I think, Abraham to sacrifice his son, to prove his loyalty to God. And then, of course, the angel stops Abraham from doing it. Abraham was setting it up, like the altar and everything, and it was like a son that he had been praying for I don't know how many years, and I always had problems with this story too. And I've butted heads with some of my, Christian counterparts about it, like, why would, that's what a dick move by God,
Yeah.
But it sounds like, the more we go into the other religions and the deeper stuff, that, child sacrifice is like a big part of their religion. But, usually it seems like it's that, other people's kids being asked to do something like that for your own,
Yeah.
But you said that's kind of when the story starts with your wanting to know more and deep dive into these things.
Yeah.
What so what I know you wanted me at some point to read your one post. I don't know. Let me know when you think that's a good time.
You should probably read that. So before I get into anything, because this is gonna really sound different than anything that most people have ever heard their entire lives.
All right. And of course, it just went off of your page. So I gotta find it. Maybe they're listening.
I've already been threatened numerous times not to expose this, but.
So 3 days ago on your Facebook page, you wrote, ontological shock is a philosophical term that refers to the state of being forced to question one's worldview. It is a natural process that occurs during the purification of the soul. Ontological shock means to change one's thoughts and views of everything they believe in, and to think in a completely different way of all things. It can also refer to the discovery and existence of extraterrestrial life on Earth. Story is coming. Be ready.
Yeah. Okay, so after that point in my life where I had to give up my own happiness, my physical happiness, in fear that, something would happen to them, I decided to really dig about, like, people have heard a lot of people deny this, but some people still know what I'm talking about. The cabal, the deep south, all these Luciferian things with sex trafficking, child exploitation. And then they hear about, Illuminati this, Illuminati that, but they all know about how a handful of people, let's say maybe 50 people out of almost 8 billion, are in total control of the world with bloodlines, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, what's his name, the Orsinis, the Colons, or Colons. And they never really question, how did they come to have that much control of these different areas and come together to do this? So I decided I want to start piecing things together. And, there's always a pattern, because when something works, why change it? So I started seeing patterns in different things. I started tying different groups together, started studying a lot of weird backstories. And something in a book, one of them said, I believe it was one of the Orsinis that stated something about, or maybe it was the Rothschilds, I don't remember, basically the same thing, that they could trace their family bloodline all the way back to Gilgamesh. And that struck me as odd that was stated in a book. And as we all know, Gilgamesh, back from Sumer, at the time, I think Mesopotamia is what they were calling it. And that's any reported historical document of a writing system originates back then, about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. It's debated still, but all from there in cuneiform. And it wasn't until, was it maybe 100 years ago or 50 years ago, they found all these cuneiform tablets, the 7 creation tablets, that talks about the sky people, which translate the Anunnaki, these giants that came and they trained them, and how they basically, people will try to say that they created life on Earth, but the tablets claim that they manipulated life that was on Earth into what we are now. And they try to tie it all into the Bible and try to make you think that the Bible is actually talking about the Anunnaki, which are trying to force themselves as our gods, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like, there's the story of how they took the primitive man at the time of what the humans were, and they started manipulating DNA, and they did this for quite a few centuries. And the story in the tablets talk about how they started off with, I think they called the black-headed man, and they put them to work right off the bat in South America about 200,000 years ago in mining gold for Nibiru or whatever, because they had blown up their planet, or their planet was dying, and they needed gold to spray in the atmosphere to save it or something. It's not very clear on that part. But over time, they just kept going and going, manipulating. And then they came out with, like, what they call the yellow man or the Asian, the red man, brown. And then at the very end, they came up with what they stated is the white man, and they stopped messing with DNA at that point. And it's not clear on if that's what they were going for or if they just were done at that point. All right. But of the white ones, they looked for a specific, there was a royal family, and the 2 sons, which were put in charge of the earth, is this operation, were Enki and Enlil. And they didn't always see eye to eye. One was more positive, one was more negative. It's the whole polarity thing.
Yeah.
And
Like
they
a Cain and Abel type?
Yeah.
All right.
So they went through these different people, and whoever had the bloodline, which they claimed from this royalty blood, you know, that only a small percentage of the white people had, and they took them and they carted them off to some to the Carpathians, some to the Caucasus Mountains. That's, you know, why a lot of people seem to call us Caucasians, because the whole story says, oh, that's where we came crawling out of a cave like dogs or whatever. But it's because the aliens were there training us in all these different things like agriculture, education, religion, the building, all the basic fundamentals of going from Neanderthal, or not Neanderthal, but like separates animal from, you know.
And it sounds
Man.
kind of like what I've read about the missing Bible text of like the Book of Enoch and stuff.
A lot of the Book of Enoch is exactly its symbolism of this story, like a lot of things are. So, you know, that's of these specific bloodlines when they found them, of the royalty bloodline from the Anunnaki, they took those and they put them in charge. So, which is funny because at that point, that was Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was the first, you know, offshoot. So that's what they called Nephilim. Where,
wasn't he like a giant too?
Yes.
Stories like, yeah.
And it's funny, you know, if you speak about Nephilim is the children of fallen angels.
Yeah.
That's where you start
with the women.
You start tying religion into this, and you start seeing the pattern of, wait a minute. Now, if this religion is saying this, but this completely bizarre story of aliens is saying this only sooner, you know, so it started raising flags for me. So I started digging around even deeper. You know, there's a lot of things I can go in different days, but the one thing that popped up was that these cults that started like throughout time, like, you know, over a period of 4,000 years, a lot of these gods were the same entities, just under different names. They were almost described exactly the same. They had the same abilities. They were known for the same things. They would disappear throughout time when they either didn't have enough followers, or when, you know, after some cataclysmic event coincidentally happened, you know, where there's periods throughout our timeline that just we're missing.
Yeah.
So, you know, curiosity, and me and my OCD, when curiosity gets a hold of me, I just dug deeper and deeper. So now I'm understanding how these people came to be in power now. But that wasn't good enough. I wanted to see like the different, you know, the child trafficking. And I wanted to understand where religion came from. And that's the part, and I don't mean to offend anybody here, because I believe religion is a great thing to do. It's great if it's going to push you to a better purpose, for betterment. But if you're going to use it to put down somebody else or weaponize it, and a lot of people do that for wars and, you know, weaponizing or making somebody feel guilty. You know, you're wrong, I'm right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand mainly Christianity, because, you know, the whole old school religions, you know, basic cults, you know, where they did all the child sacrifice and stuff.
Like myself, you mentioned that you were raised in, you know, the Catholic church. So, you know,
and
why not dig into the root, you know, of what formed our, you know,
and that's,
you have to unlearn what we've learned, you know?
Yeah. It's hard when I woke up one day, you know, it started the main kick, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I think I've been lied to my entire life about 95% of this stuff. You know, when you think something like that, my natural thing is, you know, just don't end it there. But why would they do that? How did they do that?
Yeah.
And I started seeing things in a lot of religions that all kind of said the same thing, but they varied differently. And when they varied is when it started to weaponize. So I figured, why not start? Because I had heard a rumor about the Pope having the ability to, any new religion has to be run past him. And, you know, he decides what goes in, what doesn't. And, you know, I don't really know. That's just,
and then you hear about the Vatican having the library underneath, the Vatican of all the texts that are hidden from us.
How do you even look to see if that's legit?
Yeah.
So I dug around, and there's the biblical story of where the Bible was written, but I'm not, that's your area of expertise. But then what I had discovered was it all tied back to the Roman Empire and the family of how they had intentionally erased, which the family that happened to be Bloodline, by the way.
Yeah.
They had known that they were going to pre-plan this new religion because the old ones were dying off and they wanted to be more organized. And they figured, we could weaponize this. Plus we can make a lot of money. So it sat on it for a while. They had put like different relics in the past, and the family passed it on. That's the whole what was it between the supposed Christ crucifixion to when the Bible wasn't it like a couple hundred years? What was it? I'm bad with timelines.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm definitely not like a Bible scholar.
But it took quite a while, as for the Bible to come out after that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's been a lot of, like ancient texts and storylines, previous, like when you talk about like what is it, Horus and stuff from Egypt, and how it crosses over, like, and then the worship of the sun of God. Well, but it's actually sun worship, and like you were saying with the Sumerian text and with Gilgamesh, and it's like, wasn't there a big flood, during his story, so it's like there's been like, taking some of the old and rewriting it to fit our current narrative. But I also think, like, I mean, me personally, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not a scholar, but I think like a lot of this stuff was in place, especially with the Roman Empire, even during the time of, they say, of Christ. And Christ was kind of like a rabble rouser, going against what, like, kind of like the Pharisees and, like, I guess would be the Roman, the Roman control or whatever. And I guess he grew in such popularity once, we can use this, now and manipulate his story, or keep certain things out. Like, there's like, one of the disciples, Thomas, had his gospel taken out, there's like, many different accounts.
So many different books I've heard that the Vatican has, in their secret library, but
so it's like, there might be a lot of like, some of these were true characters in the time frame, but what are we allowed to know about them and what's been kept from us? And like, maybe they kept the story of Christ because it's, there's that hope of somebody coming to rescue us instead of us rescuing ourselves, could be put out there, and that keeps people at peace. Like if we talk about like current events, the reason why most Americans are sitting on their fucking hands, why a lot of our shit's being taken away, is because there's this hope that if we get our guy in, all this is going to go away. He's going to rescue us.
Yep.
So once again, it's being played out, but I don't want to get too far off of what you're talking about.
No, that's a good thing, because that is a method of manipulation and mind control.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And okay, this is where it turns for me. I start hearing rumors, and you got to think about who was writing books and manuscripts back then, and they're all like, occultist. What's the word? I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but yeah, basically occultist. And most of them were written in esoteric symbolism, because languages are, come and go.
Yeah.
But the symbolism is very big to these societies. They've always been in some of these vast, like, knowledges, like Egypt. If you believe in Atlantis, like anything like that, there's always symbolism,
and hieroglyphics, and
there's
the
the whole
sacred
sacred
language.
geometry.
Yeah.
all that stuff. And there's truth to it. It's just something that we weren't meant to understand because it's been kept from us. And what I came to figure out was and again, no disrespect to anybody, but Buddhism came the closest to the truth of our purpose. And it wasn't quite right, but it was very close. And that's when I started understanding the hidden code to all these books. The Bible is a history book of us, but it was, and this is my truth. Take it or leave it. I mean, it doesn't change anything for me, but there's a hidden code in there.
Oh, yeah.
And until you have the key, you will not understand it. And most people aren't willing to accept that because they've been trained not to. And it reveals things that are being deliberately hid from us, that were placed there through those that were trying to help us in the future. And because of especially now, we are currently at the end of an ascension cycle.
Yeah. Which
happens every 27,000 years. And all right, let's just go fully down this rabbit hole.
Like, I mean, and real quick too, it's like, I know I've gotten in a lot into like frequencies and like the spiritual, the states of the mind and body, where if we're in a fear state, we're stuck in a low frequency. Yep. And we're easily manipulated, distracted from ascending. It's like an anchor on us, when we start reaching that higher frequency and that faith frequency, that seems when like you're more open and able for ascension to begin. Because, as much as, we want to talk about the alien connection and all that stuff too, there is a spiritual element to everything. There's a spiritual battle going on. We discussed it just recently with the whole Lionsgate thing that just ended, closed, and being receptive and open to that.
Because, occasionally there are different spectrums of light and radiation that comes through that we have been told our whole lives that radiation is bad. There's types that is not necessarily true. There's, the sun is what replenishes us. Nature replenishes us. That's why it's constantly being destroyed, and there seems to be nobody caring in, any form of power. So, I mean, with the big push of the radiation from the crystal rays, they tried to intentionally block it out in large parts of town, and that's on certain days when are sacred, when Lionsgate opened. Coincidentally, that's when they hit, and Stargates, not like the TV show, but Stargates are very real, and they're starting to open. And that is exactly why they hit Hawaii. When the Stargate opened, when Lionsgate opened, and they're trying to intentionally stop this because they know what's coming. And they want to hold on to their last thread of control here on this planet.
Okay. So, and that was something, now are like because, they're the Hawaiian people, it was very sacred, their area, they got hit too. And they're, they didn't want to turn it over to tourism or whatever, sacred people. But would you say they were maybe like in tune and ascended people that were, purposely attacked and,
the area, the area was attacked.
But was it more for like all of us to like be distracted too, because of the way the media gets behind it as well?
Yes, because more and more people are starting to awaken. They're starting to see the negative. They're not fully understanding what they're seeing or why. But it's a fear from, the cabal, the deep state, those in charge. like, the bloodlines. And if more and more people start waking up, the vibration of the collective consciousness is going to raise, and it's going to be way harder for them to work any of these, mind control.
Yeah.
So it was more, it's a fear thing.
Kind of goes to what they were talking about during COVID with the mass formation psychosis.
Yeah.
A little bit. Keep everybody, in that fear state. They're easier to manipulate.
Oh, yeah. How dangerous it's going to be, and that was just a big joke in itself. Anybody that died, no matter what, it's COVID. If they had COVID, it didn't matter if they had stage 4 cancer. If they had COVID, nope, COVID did it.
Yeah. But, you were, and then, so back to the Stargate. Well, you were headed somewhere else too. And I hope I didn't throw you off, but,
I was going to, go back to the beginning of the ascension cycle and stuff like that, because once you start seeing the whole, everybody being like they make a joke out of it and saying, oh, the satanic, blood rituals and this and that. And once you start maybe taking the chance that religion isn't what we're supposed to be doing, and maybe that it was made up as some sort of control thing with code in it, you got to understand what exactly it was, or how it works. And that goes into back during Atlantis. Towards the end of it, we were invaded because the portals had opened up. Like I said, the Stargates opened up and different things came. And we so happened to just be invaded by a negative entity. And from there, it just kind of, there's a few that joined up, and what is the NAA? It's just a very negative alien agency agenda, whatever you want to call it, with the Anunnaki, Draconians, the Greys, and also joined up with something that I'm sure down the road you're going to hear this, called the Galactic Federation, with a specific group of aliens known as Pleiadians, which are supposed to manipulate people to believe they are some type of angelic creatures, which maybe at one point was true, but that, like I said, is farthest from the truth. So this invasion happened, a cataclysmic event happened, and we started the new ascension cycle. So over time, there's when man got too intelligent or too technologically advanced, they would wipe it out with what was called the Great Resets. I mean, what we're calling them now. But back then they were called cataclysms.
So that was that's what happened to Atlantis then?
Yes.
And that was the portal came because they were the enlightened people that were kind of like advanced. They, from what I understand,
they were far advanced because, I mean, this will be another day's worth of event, but where did we all come from? I mean, if I don't believe in religion, where do I believe things came from? What people call God in a religious sense, everybody's a little different. I will refer to at times as God, so we understand that I do believe in a creator, a source. Mm-hmm. So I'll say God, but most of the time I'll say Godhead.
Okay.
And as time evolved, different races were formed, and there would be root races where 7 would go and create another. And, life has been in this galaxy far longer than people realize because, time is a man-made concept. It doesn't really happen like that. And us as humans came from a different galaxy to begin with, So here on Earth, the whole point of their agenda was we have a base 12 template shield where they'll try to say, the negative ones will only want to go to the 10th dimensional template. So if you ever hear, you'll see this popping up in times to come, or if you're not read about it now, but there's, we are 12. That's, like the 12 strand DNA But originally, like I said, 24,
Yeah.
but here on Earth, 12.
And 12, is symbolic in itself, like, the 12 disciples that
Exactly.
Christ had.
And that's where you start seeing the code and things.
Yeah.
The whole Christ was, like everybody's always complaining, that they never said Christ in the Bible and stuff like that. Christ is a word for Christos, which, what did that mean? Liquid? Was it in?
Well, I'm familiar with they call it the Christ oil.
Yeah.
In our spine or whatever.
Yeah,
that we
from
raise,
the
and
pineal gland.
Yeah, and then Christ consciousness that we try and.
Yeah, which is true because that goes back to the Christos, which was a bloodline of an angelic race, the 24 strand double diamond template that where our origins mainly are from. So there's the other code, and then the Christ consciousness once we hit 12. When you start studying up on chakras, you get a better understanding of the templates and stuff like that. So, this negative alien agenda, they came here, they don't want to hit that 12th. They wanted to detach. That's like, the whole free will.
Mm-hmm.
This free will is, because, God is unconditional love. He does, God's not going to, everybody gets a second chance. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
They want to detach from that. To hit that level of ascension, they want to stay on this physical, interdimensional, do their own thing, no regrets. It's an ego-based thing, which is why Buddhism says you got to kill your ego to achieve the rainbow body. It's in all these different religions.
Mm-hmm.
It's just always worded differently, but the clues have always been there.
How much do you know about Jewish Kabbalah and even the Quran? And how
The first time I ever read the Quran was in county.
Okay.
And I was like, that's really not that different than I thought. But it was, how are people manipulating this into some of the things?
Yeah.
Because I had only ever really talked to Muslims in, the prison system.
Yeah.
And they are nothing like the Muslims on the outside.
Yeah.
So it's.
Seems like, I get a lot of people in captivity in prisons they find some kind of religion.
Yeah.
Because it helps them, I guess, deal and,
That's what got me into Buddhism.
Yeah.
What started that? A Catholic priest that was there got me into Buddhism. Because I had always disagreed with religion. So I wanted to see the more spiritual side of things. And, it just opened me up to a lot. Like, I hate telling someone that their religion's wrong or something like that, or I disagree with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to debate them.
And although I'm a Christian and I still attend church and stuff, I go for the, I take the knowledge I get and, how I can use it to be on my growth, on my journey. I'm not like one of those everybody else and their beliefs is wrong and you gotta, I'm going to condemn you, how sometimes it's pushed to do, but yeah, right, real quick too. Yeah. So you were in the prison system and then that's how you got, into Buddhism. I forget what part of your story, what time frame was that you were in there?
Right after I made the hard choice of leaving the wife and kids.
Okay.
I spun out of control and, tried to mask it by falling back into alcohol and drugs and made a bad choice, which ended me back in, prison or county jail for 13 months. And that's when I wanted to get into spiritualism and try to get a better understanding.
Now, I wanted to touch a little bit, and I don't, I don't want to. We don't have to go too deep because we kind of just glanced over it a little bit. But I mean, and with the really deep thing that caused you to leave your family. But like this group that was asking you to do this, like how did you kind of get recruited in the beginning? And then at the beginning, obviously, because I've been in a couple myself, everything at surface level seems like we're all good.
All
people,
seems good,
you know, and we're all looking to better ourselves, to be better for humanity and help one another.
I mean,
like,
if it revealed how bad they are at the beginning, would you ever have joined?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. But how did you originally kind of get recruited to yours?
My whole life, I had thought there was something wrong with me, like I was crazy or something. Because there were certain weird things. I would hear things, I would see things. And as time went on, one of the things that was happening to me, it turned out to be called a disorder called synesthesia, which was very unknown. And, you know, like as a kid, I thought I was nuts because I would see colors as numbers. And it turns out, you know, when I brought it up, my sister also has it, but she sees, I think, like musical notes as colors or days of the week or something. It's all mixing senses, you know, and it was one of those, I wonder why this is. Why do I have this? You know,
did you go down like any kind of rabbit hole with your own bloodline?
Yeah, there's,
you know,
yeah, yes, I did.
To see like what, you know,
you
and your sister have this. It's what are the odds of two people, you know, two children, the same family?
Yeah, that's where it gets, it gets deep because, you know, most of Europe is mostly forgotten. You know, it's like, oh, I'm, you know, 50% Romanian because my mother's parents were straight off the boat. But before Romania was Romania, what happened over there? So I kept digging and digging until I found out I came from a country called Dacia, which they were the last country to be conquered by the Roman Empire. It took them 3 times before they got it. The third time, when Decebalus, the last remaining king, realized that his time was coming to an end and that if he was captured, they would parade him around and embarrass him and mock his country, you know, of Dacia. He slit his own throat so they could not have that pleasure, you know, and, you know, died like the true king he was.
Wow.
You know, he went, you know, and so that, yeah, I dug there. But then I started digging, why do I have this disorder? And then through research, I found out that a lot of people throughout time, Tesla has it, or Nikola Tesla had it. But his was, I believe, he had heightened sound perception. Like he could hear lightning 2 miles away. He could call, or he could hear a phone ringing from like 500 yards or something ridiculous. And he had that thing where he barely ever wrote down his diagrams or plans for inventions. He would see it in his head. He would test it in his head. If it didn't work, he would alter it in his head.
Wow.
And then he did it. So that's why he barely ever drew any of these things down. And when he did, they almost worked 100% of the time.
Wow.
So, I mean, when I started seeing that, and surprisingly, Elon Musk is synesthete. You know, somebody with no training whatsoever and background in rockets and propulsion and stuff like that. And look at him now.
Yeah, I'm curious about his bloodline.
Yeah,
as well.
there's got to be a reason I had this. So that's kind of what keeps me on the path, because at some point of hearing and seeing things I wasn't understanding, and, you know, the color by numbers, you know, scenario that I turn off and on, I started feeling like something was speaking to me. You know, most people would say God. And that's when I rediscovered God again in my life. And I'm remembering things from past lives. I'm being downloaded what it feels like through just in different times when I go out in the sun. Like I'm downloading code that I'm figuring out, knowing where to go next in this. You know, so my next mission was, what was our purpose on Earth? And the best answer I can say is, as a whole, we are here to evolve our consciousness. And we're being held back by this NAA through many different things. I mean, this is a long time that's going on, that basically we are fuel for them, feeding them, and being held back because they alter timelines, they alter history, they altered us to believing. This is where it gets complicated. The different the matrices, and what we're in, and how now we're in a phantom matrix through black hole technology, that we truly believe we're in a 10th dimensional template for ascension when we're still in a 12th. And since the ascension cycle's coming to an end, they're losing a lot of their technology that is out there. A lot of, I don't know if you're familiar with ley lines.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's certain key points on ley lines, power grids, and that's kind of how, what happened. The downfall of Atlantis was when the aliens came, they were using crystal technology, and they were trying way too hard underground, and they blew something which caused the cataclysm, and that's when a lot of this technology got removed from Earth. So it took a long time for this to be brought back by this negative agenda. And that's what ties in a lot of these underground tunnels that you are hearing about that we shouldn't have had the technology to make.
Yeah.
Certain these pyramids and structures, they're all on ley lines of key points and stargates. Like Giza is one of the main stargates. I think I want to say the 12th one, maybe, without looking.
Like I've heard, like, and I've discussed this with some other friends of mine too, about, the ley lines, and why some things that why certain areas of our state of Ohio have, like, why do, like, we get visits from like the president and stuff like that, why are they, do they really give a shit about
why are a lot of Masonic temples built on specific ley lines?
Yeah. And then like, I mean, we got like, like serpent mounds in southern Ohio.
Yeah.
And like there's certain, like, just areas and points that, you can feel like you feel the energy. Like, I know when I leave, like, farther from the city and I go travel and I get out to the country, like when I went across country to Idaho and stuff like that, man, I just felt like on a whole nother level, like, better, and going back to, like, you have that what was it called again, the thing with the color by numbers? Synesthesia, and how Tesla had it and all these other people. Like, we all got some sort of, like, some of us, I feel I'm very empathic, sometimes, like, I can't watch, like, jackass movies because I feel like I'm getting kicked in the balls sometimes, too, like, weird. But that there's this, us growing up in, like, normal homes or whatever, I guess, of ignorance, we didn't know how to, we discover we have these things and it makes us uncomfortable. And I think that's what drew a lot of us into addiction to numb, because I don't like how this is making me feel, or I don't know, like, yesterday I'm at this veteran thing and I should feel at home because I'm with my fellow veterans, but I'm in a place now where I don't feel like I have any bond or connection there anymore either. And this can be a lonely road when we start discovering this about ourselves and where we're heading. But, do you think and we mentioned Elon Musk, like, if we were, like, in a family, or, I mean, maybe we're part of a bloodline and we somehow got lost in the shuffle or whatever,
it's always possible,
but the ones that are raised in the family that are controlled, they know how to, like, nurture this stuff from youth. You're like, almost like Professor X's School of Gifted, with the X-Men and stuff, you go somewhere where you can feel like you fit in. But some of us just have to discover it on our own. I guess that's kind of like,
you got to figure it out. And then,
your story, if you survive, there's a lot of people either, I mean, I think we lose a lot, like you said, your friend that you lost to overdose, maybe he felt too much and we were escaping through something because we don't like how we feel, or, I battle like, depression and negative thoughts too. Like, and I don't know how to like put the shield up where we lose people to suicide and stuff like that. But these other ones that seem to be doing well, successful, maybe it's like their family's aware and in tune with all this, and they, from the ground up.
Oh, they get born and bred. I mean, over, thousands of years.
Yeah.
And they got, they got a little bit of advanced technology as well, on their side is like, hey, we're going to put you in charge of these, puny humans, and you can get some of this to stay in power. And they have, they're the only ones really in communication with these specific entities.
But do you think any of, what I was just saying, it led to your recruitment? Or was that just like you were getting into something else by chance?
When I started being a code breaker of sorts, I was always known for seeing patterns. So I could see, even if I didn't know what was wrong, I could see where the problem lied. And that's where I initially got approached by that society because I had that gift. So yes, it absolutely was what got me in. I didn't really know much about them at the time. But I heard, this is enlightenment, and, they're going to teach me a whole spiritual side. And I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I stuck with that for 6-7 years before I started questioning some things, because I saw a lot of connections with another group and then another group and another group. And I started seeing all the same negative things coming. And I was like, no, that can't be.
Yeah.
And then came my time.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just a total shock that I had, spent that much of my life, and everything I knew about them and was learning about them was a lie.
And this is just my mind operating too. Like I said, with that story with Abraham in the Bible, how like, it was a test for him. It was a test, and if he was willing to do it, but then they would have stopped him and not let him do it. But that's a test I wouldn't be willing to want to take, so I can understand and relate. But wonder if it was, if they would have been like, all right, we see your loyalty. You don't have to do this. But you'll never know. And
sometimes there is like a blood sacrifice needed.
Yeah.
Just some of these darker, because it's kind of like, in a sense, it's a mockery to God, especially with children.
Yeah.
So that's like, if you can get someone to do this,
what else?
Ha ha.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's not really, and they do it of free will. Even if they're manipulated too. It's decided it's a big mind game.
That wasn't what you weren't willing to cross that line. And
yeah, like how many times have you done something bad and been like, why did I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, how do I get manipulated to do that? And you play on someone's emotions and ego.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, to get us to the next level, we're going to have to do, is kill our own egos. And specifically, we all got to drop this nonsense and come together. We got to stop with the sex, the gender, the race, the politics. We all got to join and bring back this collective consciousness to get rid of this, because a lot of people think, good and evil, right and wrong. Don't understand, Lucifer is not an entity. Lucifer is not an angel. He's not a fallen angel. Lucifer is a program. It is a dark program that operates on the lowest frequency. And if you can lower somebody down there, all it basically is severing your connection with God. There is a good and evil, but we're in the universe. There's universal laws. We're all one. I can't, as much as when I thought this holy war was going to happen, I was dead set ready to go out and kick some fucking evil ass.
Yeah.
But then I stopped and think about it. It's like, what good is that going to do? Evil's never going to learn. It's just going to happen again.
Yeah, it'll grow in another form.
I believe some evil is only evil because they've been so conditioned that way. that they stop and think all the time, man, this is not what I want to be, but they keep falling back into it. I believe that there's hope for them, you know, and it's not, and it goes to the whole universal law of one. You know, we're all connected.
You know, it's funny that, you know, I mean, you get to, you share that information, because like, that was the message behind today's sermon at my church, you know, the pastor, I mean, it was under the Christian banner, of course, but the divide within the church, within the churches too, over politics, sex. I mean, he spoke all that stuff, and how, like, yeah, even like spoke against how we were all willing to close the church during COVID, you know, and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, talk, man, you know. it was a good, but he was like, we're all in and we took communion. It was like communion, community, united, all of us, one body, you know. So he was sharing that exact same thing that you're talking about, which is a different. Yeah, umbrella.
It's funny because I just recently, you know, had to take care of some old fines, so I sat in county again for a couple weeks. And while I was in there, you know, they're supposed to tell you to set you a court date within like 48 hours for a misdemeanor, 72 for a felony. I was in there for 2 weeks.
All right.
Nobody told me anything, and they're like, man, you had to have really pissed off somebody, because, you know, they're not giving you a court date yet. So I went in there not mad at anybody. You know, like, I just had my friend had set me up, and
you're like, hey, I'm getting fed and I got a place to stay.
I never got mad at who put me there, because essentially my actions did, but I got set up, like I said. I never was mad at them. I was confused and hurt. So I stayed calm the whole time, and I figured I'm in here for a purpose. I'm to preach something, to learn something. I'm always learning something. And there was a lot of people, like a lot of like guys that were in there, like straight up, I hate whitey, you know, gang banging.
Yeah.
And we all sat down and talked, and they're like, oh my God. And we all exchanged numbers, and they're like, I want to learn more about what you're saying. They're like, I've never had anybody, you know, show it like that. It's like, yeah, we really need to stop this. We're being played against each other.
Yeah.
You know, and
dude, that's pretty incredible too. I mean, because that you're there doing that as well, because I mean, I know, you know, a little bit more about, you know, your history in the punk rock and whatever.
And hell, I had horn implants for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, people really have a negative view of my past.
But you know, even like with the just having that race relationship that you just spoke of, I mean, you know, them, you know, with the I hate whitey, and you're able to, you know, exchange numbers and break, you know, form fellowship by like,
yeah, in a short amount of time, by like getting to like, why do you think this way? Who taught you this way? I mean, anything, you know, can be untaught. I mean, like I said, we've been manipulated and lied to for so long that it's not easy to get out of. It's just, you do it with patience and love. I mean, if you have good intent, you know, I believe it'll work. And, you know, that's where I think why I'm in a sense being chosen, but I'm not like the only one. I mean, there is a dark side out there, and the Luciferians that are everywhere being manipulated and controlled, there is a light.
Yeah.
And it's not very well known, but there are organizations. And, you know, just for anybody out there, I mean, you are not alone. There's literally just thousands upon thousands, if not millions, that are waking up and learning, you know. But a lot of things, like, that's where the fear's kicking in about losing control. So certain fields are being infiltrated. And growing up, I was always taught that witchcraft was a joke. People that use crystals were a joke. Even astrology, all jokes.
Yeah.
And I come to find out
the Ouija board.
It's all true. It's all legit. It's all in, you know, our understanding. We used to know this very well, but it's lost knowledge. Like sacred geometry. Like I said, there's certain symbols you can put on things to manipulate it. Crystals all vibrate at a different frequency. Everything does. Everything has a soul.
Now, and I mean, we've been going on for an hour already, and I know we could go on for several.
Oh, we could go way deeper
with more stuff in particular, and if there is some you want to cover before we wrap up, but it just got me thinking too about, I mean, what I've looked into with frequencies and, like the talk, it's like a conspiracy with everybody writes it off as conspiracy. I know people that work like high ups at AT&T is like, oh, don't you want faster internet? Don't you want faster, information? What, come on, it's like with the 5G and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And those towers that have been all over. I mean, there's one at the end of my street here,
Yeah, that's being pushed for a reason too.
Yeah.
That goes deeper into a story that, we
Probably
could always go on down
episode.
the road. But yes,
Yeah.
that is not a conspiracy with that.
Yeah.
That is 100% legit.
And then, talking about portals, I mean, we could probably talk about CERN in Switzerland and all that too.
Yeah.
Aware of all that, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. That's with all their coincidental icons and statues and ceremonies that they have on specific days.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you start seeing all of these are connected and they're all doing relatively the same thing, you gotta lose that ego that, oh my God, I've been wrong all along. Let me start looking into this for myself, because the truth is something you can't be told. The truth is something that you got to figure out for yourself. There is no truth other than self-truth. And that's, the bottom line. I can tell you everything how it works, but until you figure it out, you're never going to see it as truth.
Yeah. I mean, that's been, when I think of some of the disputes I've had with friends on just surface level dumb shit like politics, or like during the whole like vax unvax thing, it was just like, dude, why am I being stuck arguing with this when I'm already, here, and I wish I could bring you here, but I can't. You have to choose to come here, and it's usually it boils down to ego. And now the people that went ahead and thought they were doing the greater good for grandma and everything like that, they don't want to admit buyer's remorse or anything. Like the people that stood behind the puppet in the White House right now too. They don't want to admit buyer remorse, and it's all remorse because it's all freaking ego. Their ego will not allow. Our egos won't ever let us admit we are wrong. Where it's like, I've learned on my spiritual journey, because I've hit so many bottoms and didn't want to lose the things that mean the most to me, is that I had to start admitting I'm wrong, and it's hard to teach me and learn. And I still act up and especially with my kids, get mad and whatever. But it's like I've done it in the past, and I need to do it more often too in the present. Is just apologize, go to my children and apologize. It's been one of the most bonding things for us when I'm wrong. Say, hey, I was wrong. I shouldn't have acted that way.
Yeah, it's not actually embarrassing at that point, like you'd think it was.
No,
it's kind of like uplifting, and it's like a pressure off you almost.
Yeah, and also like it lets them know, I can come talk to this guy when I'm going through some, I always want to keep that door open, but it going back to like where we're at, trying to, I can't get any, like, that's why it's like, we got mutual friends on social media that will just like argue and nag and post their stuff. I'm like, dude, you ain't going to convince me on here. I ain't going to convince you on here, so just stop. Yeah. But I can scroll by when I see people like posting shit I don't agree with.
We all got that ability, man.
I just scroll by and go about my day. I don't agree, but their ego won't allow them to scroll by, because they got to throw their. And I know there's one particular guy we both know that I'm not even going to give him any airtime, but
no matter what,
yeah.
And I'll admit, sometimes I throw a comment as total sarcasm. I'm trying not sarcasm. I still think is bad, which feeds into a lot of bad things and arguments. And I really should stop doing it, but sometimes it's just I haven't fully let go of my ego yet.
Yeah, and neither have I, dude. We're still learning, but I like the fact of when we can admit that, we're in the right direction. You fall forward, you trudge forward. Like when we talked about when you were messaging me about the Lion's Gate, about getting out in the sun and just taking time to ground with the earth and sit out in the sun and just like meditate and breathe. And it's hard for my head's like, I went to this vet fest yesterday, and there was actually like a spiritual crystal people tent that they did Reiki healing and card reading. And I stopped at their tent. I ended up hanging out with them the majority of the day. Like I said, I was with all these veterans, and I felt more connected with them. And she was doing my chakras, and she's just like, your crown is like swirling. It's kind of like, it's hard. It's all over. I'm like, that's my head. It's all over the place. And then my root is like, she's like, you got to let go, man. You won't let me in there. I'm like, I don't know. It's like, so, but I could understand. I wasn't like, oh, this is foo-foo or whatever. It's like, no,
Yeah.
Like,
At one
totally
point though, did you think that?
Yeah.
It's a journey to, I wish I wouldn't have spent this many years fighting and debating that, and I would have just studied it back at that point, to get a better understanding. But, that was part of me. I had to kill off part of my ego to get to that point.
But I know, so the ontological shock statement, you had me read that, which, I guess pretty much explains what we were just talking about with a lot of the people out there that might not, that will watch and listen or whatever, and may not, or just tune it out,
Yeah.
But what other things did you want to try and touch on, or you feel like we've laid a good foundation for maybe down the line coming back and covering something else?
Well, I wanted to, let's see, like you mentioned earlier about nobody's coming to save, this or that, or you. It's the power is within ourselves. Only we are going to save ourselves. That's why, don't hold on to religion to believe that, because, all religions are saying the same thing. Basically, our understanding is not ready, but you're seeing that things are all connecting over time. That we got to do this on our own. There's a lot of negative stuff going on. We are at a very new point in the history of existence. And yes, there is a lot of things out there watching us, sitting by outside of, the earth, because they want to see how we do. They're all rooting for us. But here on earth, we're plagued with a very dark program that was intentionally put in. And we all signed up for this. We just do not remember. We're going to have to go through this battle, and we're not through the worst of it yet. But you got to lose the ego. You got to go at it with love, with unconditional love. Everything deserves a second chance. And we're each going to have the battle, whether it's in like during the day, during night, maybe in a dream, maybe in a daydream, that our battle is going to happen. And we can't allow it to suck us into it, because it's all part of the trap. We have to just, like you said, just scroll on by. Out of sight, out of mind. That's going to be our final test, is basically doomsday, the apocalypse, but it's going to be to each our own.
Yeah. And I think we're similar too, is like that when we talk about love, and we want all the people that we like love on this realm or whatever, to join us, to be able to fight, ascend, with us. So it's like, that's why we try and put the stuff out there, I think, but but at the same time, it seems to like almost alienate us more. You know, like you said, I mean, we can scroll by when we see people's posts because we don't engage, because that's just low level stuff on a keyboard. And, you know, this is more real, me and you sitting next to each other having this discussion, you know, than, you know, but I think in our hearts, we want to try and like, hey, we're trying to throw something at least to lead you to go dig deeper. And, you know, like going back to my, you know, my Christian foundation and my Christian background for my fellow Christians out there too, is like, dude, like you said, it's code in there. Christ talked about within, that God is within us. And he says, you know, we're the temple of God, you know? So it goes back to like, nobody else is coming to save us. It's within us to save ourselves.
Yeah.
You
like
know, the Romans maybe took that to like, oh, Christ is going to come back and save us. No, Christ is in us. You know, if you want to look at it that way, for my Christian listeners out there that might struggle with everything we're talking about, you know,
it's like a lot of people you got to also think, you know, certain parts of the Bible were taken out. There was one part specifically about reincarnation, which, you know, goes back to the whole ascension cycle. You know, so some people think, oh, we just do this one time around, and they don't believe in reincarnation, and that's fine. I believe that once we are born, we do not die. Nothing ever dies. We just reform. And we just come back, and we have the choice to come back as, you know, because we're learning each time.
Yeah.
Like I might want to come back next time as a fish to understand that experience. I might come back as a tree to understand that experience. You know, that's why I'm saying everything has a soul. You can come back as inanimate objects for all I know. You know, I don't know what the limit is, but a lot of times
my carnal side wants to come back as a vibrator, so I get more pussy.
I'm going to come back as a tampon next time. No, but it's all like, on your deathbed, and they say life flashes before you, you're like, man, I could have done this better. I wish I would have done that. Well, guess what? After, you know, this physical body, let's say that you get that chance. Like, what do you think you did wrong, or what do you think you can do better? And you have that chance. And
I agree with that 100, because it's like, you know, like past life, you know, they do like past life regression stuff. But yeah, I agree that we're where we're at having this discussion because we've made a lot of fucking mistakes in past lives, even in this one.
Yeah.
You know, in this current one, we can both admit, you know, we've made a lot in this current one, but it's all, and maybe where our trajectory is going, like in the past life, you never got out of it. Maybe you'd still be in prison for something worse, and maybe you'd still be doing something, you know, in your past life, you know. But this time it was just like, all right, it's not Groundhog's Day. I'm going to do different this time.
I believe at some point when I found God and I understood what was going on, what I was hearing. And, you know, I think that's when I woke up and realized, whoa, like I said, you know, we don't remember the past and, you know, why we're here and what our purpose was. But a lot of us are waking up and we're realizing what the purpose is. Yeah. And, you know, what the purpose of life and how our part in this is going to, you know.
And I mean, and I'm not saying that as far as we feel we are right now, and that could be, like I said, ego right there with that statement, that we're going to get it right this time around either, you know.
Yeah, completely. I mean, this cycle still has quite a bit of time left on it.
Yeah.
But it's beginning, and I really hope in this physical lifetime that I actually see it.
Yeah.
I really hope I do. Because there's a lot of things holding us back. Even if we do get to the point of ascension, there is, for lack of better words, a net around the earth that is stopping that from happening. So we are on a prison planet of sorts, in a soul trap, where they're just being regenerated. And, you know, the whole AI thing and the soul trap, that's for another day. If we don't win this war, what's to come?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that could be a good place to end it, unless there's one other thing that was on your heart that we definitely needed to get out real quick? Or
yeah, there's a couple. Yeah, there's
stuff for another.
There's a couple things I'd like to end with.
Okay.
One, shortly, to my ex and children, I'm sorry, but I had to do this. I didn't want you hurt, and I hope someday you will understand and forgive me. And the last thing is, people also, they ask me all the time because, you know, they tie in spirituality and religion and they hear me talk about things. And fallen angelics is like the Anunnaki and the Draconians, because they were all of a specific root race, and they just over time didn't want that God connection anymore. So, you know, that's when they chose the angelic, they became the fallen, which went to the negative frequency. People ask me all the time, they're like, well, if aliens are real, demons are real, fractals are real, portals, ley lines, all that stuff is real. The one question I get asked a lot is, what about angels? Are angels real? And it's very hard to explain this, to have somebody understand and feel the seriousness of what I say and about to say. Yes, angels are very real. We are the angels. We just don't remember.
Awesome. So with that, I'm sure we'll have you back on because there's so much more stuff to talk about. But I felt that, you know, I'm glad we finally did this one.
Yeah, me too.
Because, you know, there's maybe, you know, even if it's just one person that listens to it, that starts their own journey.
Yeah.
You know,
like I said, it all sounded crazy to me, but always research. If you question anything I say, don't just be willing to debate it, say it's wrong because it's something you don't agree with.
And
always research.
And you know, I wanted to say too, I didn't do like a disclaimer in the beginning or anything like that, but you know, I mean, I might not be 100% where you're at, on board with a lot of stuff, but I'm willing to listen and you know, use some of the stuff that where I am at and what I do know, see how it interconnects, and you know what, you know, I learned a lot more today, you know, with about you and your story, because you know, I didn't immediately go to ego or pass judgment and just put up a wall. You know, I mean, when we first met and hung out, you know, back in the day when we were raging alcoholics and lunatics and assholes, you already had the
get in fights everywhere, you know.
The tattoos and the, you know, but I still came and we talked and we found a connection. I didn't put up judgment like I and talk to this guy, you fucking freak or whatever, you know, which I'm sure you've dealt with.
Yeah, you know, some people are stuck on that's how they think I still am. Other people are like, after talking, they're like, you're not anything like I expected. They're like, you are a really nice guy.
Yeah. And I think that's a lesson that hopefully we could teach through this episode as well. It's just like, man, you know, everybody's got a story. Be willing to listen. You know, they say in the room, some of the wisest guys in recovery have told me that they listen with their ear, or they listen with their eyes, you know, and I'm willing to do that, or take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
And shut up and listen. So, John, man, it was good reconnecting with you and having you on here. And like I said, we'll do it again sometime soon. And we'll definitely like figure out like a specific thing that we're going to attack. And, you know, we'll go from there. But I hope everybody out there, you know, got the moral of the story, like the Jerry Springer, you know, what was it? Final thoughts or whatever, you know. But awesome, dude. Good having you on.